So I'm going to just go through a brief historical overview, which I'm actually going to dash through because I think it's been covered a little bit. Maybe look a little bit at the socioeconomics of French deep-sea fisheries and then at the market response for these fisheries. Bloom is a non-profit organization. We've published the book, The Deep, in 11 languages with very great public success. And the exhibition that we've curated has traveled to a few countries. So we've had 1 million visitors so far and a media impact of over 1 billion people. We're established in Hong Kong and Paris, and we are part of the Deep Sea Conservation Coalition, which is a coalition of about 70 NGOs working towards the protection of the deep ocean from destructive fishing practices, looking forward to having sustainable management practices in place, and safeguarding endangered species, including fishermen. That's a bit of a joke, but it's not that much of a joke, really. And ensuring sound governance of public resources, whether it be fish or funds, public monies. We also work in the field of education. We collaborate with governments, such as the Chinese government, the French government, and we conduct independent research. The historical overview, this is a map with a distortion which shows the importance of each country in the world. This is cumulated deep-sea species over the years. You've seen before that deep-sea fisheries really started in the 1960s, 70s for further countries and for European countries. It's more like the end of the 1980s. And so you see that France is actually having a 7th position after New Zealand, Iceland, Russia, Spain, Portugal, and such. French deep-sea fisheries, and this is actually drawn from a chapter by Pascal Laurence, which actually very well summarized the beginning of these fisheries. They emerged as a result of overfishing of more accessible fishery resources in the North Sea and the Northeast Atlantic. These fishermen actually ran into profitability issues with declining fish stocks, traditional fish stocks such as monkfish and saithe, and declining quotas due to the degraded status of the overfished stocks. So the fishing effort was redeployed by industrial fleets, especially based in Lorient, Boulogne, and Concarneau, and they've redeployed their fishing effort into the deep sea. This new fishing frontier was opened and supported by the IFREMER, which is the French Research Institute for the Exploitation of the Sea. So the IFREMER deployed some of our national research means, such as our ship, Thalassa, to try to find new fisheries grounds and new fisheries resources, for example, around Rockall and Haddon, and in other areas of the Northeast Atlantic. So they came on board, the fishermen came on board with them, and even 2 trawlers had met them on the spot to find new fishing resources. Excuse me. There was a marketing effort in France to present the fish and make sure that deep-sea resources would be accepted by consumers. So we filleted the fish because they didn't look very appealing to consumers. They were renamed because, what is it? Slimy orange roughy had a weird name in the first place. I can't think of it, but slimy something. Rat tail was grenadier. So obviously we've thought of more attractive names to make sure that this would be accepted by consumers. And more than anything, we actually gave them for free. So fishermen had a deal by which the fish would be given away for free to consumers by the time they would actually accept these new species on their plates. So French became more or less hooked on these species, so the fish that we catch, we actually consume them all. It seems that the biggest consumption pattern that we have in France is in the west of France, in the western regions around Brittany and so on. That's from talking with retailers. I'm not going to expand on this graph because you can see that basically the bulk of these fish that you can see are saithe, monkfish, and ling. And you can see that the colorful species that appear on the right-hand side are the more recent landings from new deep-sea resources, and you can hardly make up from the decline of more traditional fish resources. The specialty, I guess, in France, and we have a bit of a specific situation, is that For example, this is the last accessible FAO data, 2010, and you can see that 83% of the deep sea catch in France, and deep sea being defined by the 2002 regulation of the EU, and we can see that 83% of this catch is actually composed of just the three main species, which are round-nosed grenadier, blue ling, and black scabbard fish. So they make up 83% of our, actually a little over, of our catch. So there was a gold rush on orange roughy when it came up, because of course orange roughy was very nicely valued on markets. But the resource, as it was shown in a graph earlier, the resource declined very quickly. So fisheries and fishing fleets became unprofitable very quickly, and some of them actually went into bankruptcies. So as of 1998, we've seen a reorganization of fishing fleets to make sure that whatever they were catching in the Northeast Atlantic was landed in Ireland or Scotland, so as to reduce fuel costs of going back and forth to, French ports, which didn't make sense in terms of fuel costs and also how many days they could be spending actually out there fishing. The French deep sea fleet, that's based on several data sets from the Ministry of Agriculture or some national agencies that promote fisheries in France. So you can see that in 1989 we had, for example, 1989 there were 41 vessels that were doing part-time deep-sea fishing, and specialized units were only 6. This went up to 1995. 58 vessels were, conducting some deep sea fishing, but specialized units were about 20. And now, if you look at year 2010, we have about up to 30 special permits and 11 specialized units. And one of those units has gone down, actually, because it's grounded in Scotland in the early year of 2011. So up to 90% of these units from national data, the deep sea landings only represent less than 10 tons in the year. So the bulk of French fisheries with a deep sea permit, which enables them to land some deep sea species, that doesn't represent a lot. So what the French national data system or the data system people gave us was a cut to try to categorize French fisheries in a different way. And they said 11 vessels actually land 90% of the value of the French deep sea catch, and 5 ships only land more than 500 tons per year. So you can see that you actually reduce the scope of how many vessels are actually implicated quite thoroughly into these deep sea fisheries. The changes since those data were made available is that indeed in 2001, Scapèche, which is the Intermarché, the supermarket-owned fleet, they lost 1 vessel with an accident in Scotland. So, and Euronor, which is the Boulogne-sur-Mer-based fleet, has actually shifted away and reconverted its two full-time specialized boats that used to be targeting deep-sea species only. They've reconverted them to target saithe, pollock fish, and to actually value saithe on the frozen market, which works really quite well for them, it seems. So now Euronor only has 1 of these boats, which is only doing now part-time deep-sea fishing. So there's been a concentration of how many large vessels are actually targeting deep-sea fish today. And we're down to 3 ships now that land more than 500 tons per year. Scapèche is the dominant player in this game, and so this is the Intermarché-owned fleet. Deep-sea fish represent, as per their own statements made consistently and publicly, deep-sea fish represent 40% of the turnover of their large trawlers. Maybe, and this was maybe in 2009, 2010, maybe this would be more now as a result of one of the ships going down. The quota was redistributed, so maybe there's more deep-sea species caught by these 2 large trawlers. So anyway, we could ask them to share this data with us. Scapèche, so this is an estimation based on the public statements that they've made of how much, what was the catch of each ship. And what was the percentage of the catch? So 40% of the catch was made up in value of deep sea species. So we have an estimate of having, 60% minimum of the company's catches made up of deep sea species, all the way up to 86% of their, to 60% of the company's catch representing, as per the French global landings of deep sea species, and it may be up to 86% of Scapèche deep sea catch, representing 86% of the French global catch of deep sea fisheries. So showing that this is a very important player today. Why would Intermarché, a supermarket, go into fishing? Well, there's no coincidence, of course. Intermarché has a vertical integration policy of integrating basically food production means. So this is a quote by their CEO, basically former CEO, that says that they have to have access to supply. I'm actually gonna dash through this. Why did we develop an expertise on economics of these French deep sea fisheries? We were part of a multi-stakeholder consultation, which was supposed to look at deep sea fisheries and whether they were sustainable ecologically and economically. And basically the process didn't go very well. We had a lot of issues with what happened within the process. So the report, as it stands today, was very embarrassing for the government because there were no references, and NGOs resigned from the process, and the peer reviewing that was done of the report was not integrated. So as a result, this file does not have any legal standing. But what it did do is that, and this is the critique that we've made of the process, it's available in English on our website should you want to investigate this further. But the process did hint us on the fact that all the socioeconomic parameters had been avoided and not addressed, and we thought that it was really worth trying to build some understanding and to gather data, so that's what we've been doing. I want to make it very clear that I've got this one slide about job estimations. And that's the weak point, and it's very difficult to estimate jobs if you don't have access to the real data. So I don't want to say something funny because the rest of our data is extremely robust. I just want to say that during this mission, this stakeholder mission that we had on deep sea fisheries, we talked about 100 to 200 jobs, and then when the Commission came out with its proposal to phase out deep sea bottom trawling and to review the current deep sea fisheries management regulation, this 600 jobs figure from the French side was circulated, and so we were really wondering what's the calculation basis for this, and we want to understand, how it came up. And we've asked, and so far we haven't got a response, so I can't basically comment on that. Scapèche's total employees as they appear in the published accounts, and the accounts actually only talk about 9 boats, but part of those 9 boats are the 6 deep sea boats. So the total employees of Scapèche are about 103 in 2011. So the other things that we did is that we based our analysis on account analysis, because that's at least something where you can't make up figures, estimations. There's no estimations. Just look at the figures and you can comment the figures. So we published an analysis in 2011 that ran all the way until 2008, and we wanted to update the key findings, which were that the 3 main fleets that were targeting deep sea species in France were chronically loss-making, despite having and receiving very large subsidies. And so we wanted to update this, but then we realized that Scapèche had stopped publishing its accounts since 2009, so we engaged legal recovery proceedings for translators, that's assignation en référé, and the fact that we initiated this encouraged them to publish their accounts in mid-January 2013. So we've just produced an analysis of Intermarché's fishing fleet's accounts, and therefore we're able to produce this global analysis of these 3, what used to be the 3 main deep sea fishing fleets in France. And first we can look at the subsidies that they received over time. So Euronord, from 2006 and 2011, received 4.9 million euros public subsidies made up of EU and national money, French money. Scapèche, from 2002 to 2011, that's based on what accounts are available. 2002 to 2011 received 9.34 million euros. And Delem, you can't see it because this little thing has popped, but Delem received 1.05 million euro subsidies. This is a new subsidy mechanism that came up. I wish I could comment on it, and I'm happy to talk out to you afterwards, but I'm late, so. Now we can look at the economic performance of the French deep-sea fleets and to look at their financial results. So Euronav, for the same time span, has accumulated 8.1 million euros of net losses after tax, despite receiving 4.9 million euro subsidies. They actually basically went bankrupt, and so were bought by UK Fisheries in 2010. And we've seen, since they were bought by UK Fisheries and since they actually disengaged from deep-sea fishing somewhat, quite importantly, we've seen a slight improvement of their situation that I'm going to show in the next slide. Scapèche has done 0.1 million euro net losses on the same time span, but that's after tax, and that's despite 9.3 million euro subsidies and 16.9 million euros of debt write-offs from Intermarché. So in other words, that's cash injection from the group inside the fishing fleet. So the actual net losses, if you didn't have that, would be, of course, a lot more important. Delem has a 3.6 million euro net loss after tax, despite 1 million euro subsidy, and 7 million euro financial result and 9 million euro exceptional profit. So basically, their shifts, the way they've been shifting. Okay, I've got to hurry up. So anyway, they've been doing quite smart financial movements to improve their situation. The performance indicator is really the operating. I'm going to comment this one last slide. The real performance indicator for a fishing company is to look at the operating result, because that's turnover minus operating costs. And that's a really faithful picture of the fishing activity. And for Euronav, you can see that if you exclude the subsidies received, Euronav has improved and it's now doing a profit. So its actual fishing activity is now profitable. It's very small. It's not a huge profit, 2%, but at least it's not in deficit. Scapèche, its operating result without subsidies is 8%. If you look at Delem, the operating result, is 25%. So basically, that's a percentage of the turnover. So when you say that a fishing company is losing 25% of its, as an operating result, it's 25% of its turnover. So that means that the fishing activity is seriously not just unprofitable, which I think is very clear. It's not even viable. So I would bet that Delem is going to go bankrupt, or if it's not already bankrupt, it's going to be for sale or something very soon.
Nouvian, tiene que terminar porque llevamos.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to finish up.
Market response in France, but basically to show that some supermarkets have already shifted away from deep-sea fish, selling deep-sea fish, but that's basically the core of the presentation.